Hello and welcome to the MyClayCo studio. My name is Carla and today I'm going to be taking you through the multi-cut method. I'll be telling you what the multi-cut method is, why we love it so much, and why you're not going to come across some of the other pitfalls that you will get with other release agent techniques. We have a few things to cover, so let's get into it. So what is the multi-cut technique? Now, the multi-cut technique can be known by a couple of other names like the double cut or triple cut method, but we like to use the name multi-cut because it will depend on your clay thickness and your cutter style as to how many cuts you may need to do. So sometimes I rely on 2, other times I'll rely on 3. So that's why we just say multi-cut, because it is going more than once. The multi-cut technique is utilizing multiple cuts so that you can cut in layers, especially handy for if you have imprint or intricate cutters, because it can help you stamp out in those layers so that you're less likely to pull back clay with your cutter. Now, it's not necessarily needed if you have a simple cutter like a large circle or a rounded trapezoid or something. This is more a method for if you're using those more detailed cutters. Now, let's talk about other release techniques and why we prefer multi-cut and pretty much solely use it here in the studio. So other techniques that you may have come across are adding some form of powder additive. This can either be cornflour or a pigment powder, adding water to your pieces, or adding a layer of plastic wrap over the top. Now, these are all fine techniques. However, there are a couple of pitfalls for each of them. So what I will say with cornflour, which seems to be a very popular one in the market, but I will say that it's very difficult to fully remove that cornflour once it is on your clay, especially if you are using a darker clay like a black or a navy. Cornflour is white, so it is actually going to show and have that residue on your piece. The way that these release techniques work is that they're essentially creating a layer in between your polymer clay and your cutter. Now, what happens if you've got a layer of something and you press firmly into it? It's going to try and embed. So you think about that cornflour or pigment powder, you pressing it into your clay is essentially embedding some of that powder in. Now, you could come over with an acetone after they're baked to try and remove that, but it can change the, top of your piece, and you won't be able to get into all of the nooks and crannies of any intricate cutter pieces to really clear it out. And once it's baked, unfortunately, it's pretty much baked in. So it's one that we don't use at all. The one that we do use out of the two is a mica powder or pigment powder, but we don't ever use this as a release technique. It is purely for an aesthetic, but it doubles as a release technique. So much like cornflour, your pigment powder when put on creates that barrier between the polymer clay and the cutter, and it makes it much easier to just push straight in with your cutter and release because you've got that barrier. Now, mica powders and pigment powders are great because you actually want them to embed into your clay. You want them to have that adherence. So you don't have to worry about making sure every skerrick is cleaned off of your polymer clay piece before you put it in the oven. However, it does change the aesthetic of your piece. So if you're not wanting a completely gold or a completely shimmery piece of clay, you might not want to use a pigment powder or mica powder, so it's not one that you can use for every single one of your pieces. The next one that I will go through is water. Now, water is fine with polymer clay because polymer clay does have plasticizers in it, so it will slick straight off. You just want to make sure that if you are using water, that you're clearing off the water of any scraps before you're actually going to be bowling them up. Because if you bowl them up and it's got water in it, it can create air pockets. And some brands actually react poorly with water. So it's just another one that we don't necessarily use all that often. And it's mainly just an outcome of using water transfers. Now, if you are using something like a bookmark cutter that has a really large stamping area, I will say it is very handy to use a water barrier layer, just so that you're not having a large surface area pressing down into that polymer clay. But in terms of that, I would actually use plastic wrap, which is our last one. So plastic wrap is a great way that you can easily cut through and not have any clay because you have a physical barrier there. The only downside is, again, it changes the aesthetic of your piece. If you want really sharp, clean edges, you won't get that with using plastic wrap. It's going to dome your edges. Now, that might be the outcome that you want. You might want domed circles or your croissants to be domed, So it's great for if you want that technique. But again, we're not utilizing it in those instances as a release technique. We're utilizing it for an aesthetic purpose. So onto multi-cut, that's where we're not adding any additives. It's not changing the aesthetic of the piece. It's just going straight in and using a slightly different technique for cutting to get the outcome that we want. So I think now we should go into how to actually do the multi-cut method with all of the tips and tricks I've learned to make sure that you're really perfecting this technique. To demonstrate the multi-cut method, I do have one of our little baby dragon cutters, and I also have some clay rolled out to about 2 millimeters thick. Now, 2 millimeters thick, I will probably do 3 cuts with this one just because it is a smaller, intricate cutter. So if this was a bigger cutter of the same dragon design, and I had it on 2 to 3 mil thick, I might only have to use 2 cuts, but this is small and intricate. So I'm going to go in with the 3 cuts. So with this one, you just want to look at your cutter and see, okay, I've got 2 key tapered edges. So you can see here I've got the tail and I have this imprinted wing section up here. So any tapered edges are generally where your clay will want to stick. So this is the side that I want to make sure that I lift first. So that's my tip number 1. When using multi-cut method, you want to try and look at your cutter and see where it's more likely to pull the clay back with it, and you want to lift from that edge first. So what I'm going to do is I place my cutter down on my clay, and I'm just going to lightly press. And as you can see, it's in the clay, but it's not in the clay too much. And at this point, I'm going to take it from that tapered edge as I hold down the other side. What this does is it means that it lifts from one side, but not the other. So I'm still keeping it within the imprint. I know a lot of people say when they use the multi-cut that sometimes they have difficulty realigning their cutter when they go in for a second or third cut. This is how you stop it. So I lift that difficult tapered edge, and then I can feel when it's put back in there. And then what I do is I pull up the other side as I push down this side. And again, you can see this side is now pulled up and that side is back sitting in the clay. So that's just making sure that my cutter is not coming fully out of the clay and losing that cut space where it originally was. So now I can sit it back flush in the clay, and we're going to go in with the second cut. Now this second cut will most likely start to do our imprint. And now that I've got it in, it's not fully in yet because I can't feel the tile when I press down, but I felt a little bit more resistance, which means that I'm probably at the imprint. And I'm actually going to rock from the wing section. See, I've lifted up and you can see that here. It's slightly more lifted on that side than it is this side. And then I press the lifted side down as I lift the other. And as you can see, it's still fully sitting in that clay. But you have the freedom to wobble it around within that cut space, and it's not going anywhere. Now we push down and we do our final cut. Again, I'm going to pull up from the wings. I kind of do like a rocking movement as I remove it. And there we go. I can now take this off, and I have the perfect little cut on my baby dragon. And now that we've gone through all of that, I just wanted to jump in as a reminder to say different equals different. Just because we love using the multi-cut technique and don't gravitate towards something like cornflour doesn't mean that cornflour is wrong. If it works for you, it works for you. And that's what you want to find in polymer clay. You want to test a bunch of different methods and then find what works and stick to it, because the more you practice something, the better at it you're going to be. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video today and that I hopefully taught you something about how to use the multi-cut technique with your polymer clay. It is absolutely our go-to. We basically don't use anything else. I know I've said it before, but once you nail it, it's just perfect. If you did enjoy the video, we would love for you to like and subscribe to the channel so that you can keep seeing more informative videos about polymer clay. And of course, if you had any questions about the video today or simply need some more assistance with your multi-cut method, don't forget you can drop a comment down below. We'll see you next time. Bye.